What if you became your own purpose? What if instead of seeking everything outside of yourself and putting everything else outside of yourself first as your obligation, as the way that you love, as the way that you live, as the way that you lead, as the legacy that you give, and instead purpose isn't something that you chase or seek, but purpose is something that you become. And that by becoming your own purpose, that becomes the seed for the way that you love, for the way that you live, for the way that you lead, and for the legacy you create in each moment that you are breathing and the legacy that you leave behind. This is a powerful time where we can choose what comes next. The world right now, many individuals are overwhelmed with life. In survival of life, life is, when we look outside of ourselves, the world seems and can feel like a crazy, cruel place where it's like the world's going to shit. In survival mode, with the cost of living, the rise of AI, the acts of violence right now, the war on our very humanity, on our very identity, can be heartbreaking and overwhelming, where it can feel like surviving is enough, where we need to put everything before ourselves and we need to find a way through. What if the way through was by coming home to yourself and being and becoming your own purpose? And we didn't have to abandon ourselves in service of others, that instead we are here to become the source from which our love, our life, our leadership and our legacy flow. And that purpose doesn't have to be a role. It's not an activity. It's not how productive we are. It's not a sacrifice. But purpose becomes our presence. Purpose becomes our congruency. It becomes our energy. It becomes our conviction, our currency, our energy flow. And purpose being so anchored in who we are and how we show up and how we be in the world before we do in the world, that what flows from us is clear, is clean, is self-sustaining and alive. Because when you become your own purpose, our life stops leaking energy. Our love stops costing us our life force and our very selves. We're no longer loved from our self-abandonment. Our energy is no longer something that we have to find. Our life, our being becomes its own energy source. Our leadership stops coming from depletion and burnout, and our legacy becomes embodied, not something that sits on a tombstone or something that we feel like is a future state, but rather, and stops being performative, but rather becomes something that we breathe into each moment, that we are awake and that we choose to be alive. And it's not selfish. This isn't about self-care. This is about sovereignty. This is about responsibility. And this is also about choice. And it's about doing something differently. If you are new here, my name is Chantal Thompson and I'm a proud Barkindji Yampa woman. I'm a proud mother of 5 children and auntie. And these are the roles that seed who I am as a person, who I am as a being. And they flow and weave into all that I do and all that I am. I'm known as the Barkindji warrior heart. And these lessons that I'm sharing with you, the teachings that I'm sharing with you, come from my lived experience. And it's not something that I'm 5-10 years ahead of you on the journey. It is something that is being activated through my life experience. I teach from my life experience. My awards, the credibility, my receipts are from my lived experience. They're not from external achievements or qualifications. And this is the Warrior Heart Rising Season, the Warrior Heart Activation, and it's something that I want to share with you. I'm currently working towards weaving the Warrior Heart into the world. And I currently have an offer, the Warrior Heart Activation, just $97. Is $97 worth your investment in yourself, in your now, and what can become possible tomorrow? Because you chose to come home to yourself, you chose to invest and choose yourself, understanding that that becomes the seed that all else becomes. A seed, a tree has to take into its roots before it can provide shade. And what if you became your own seed? What if everything else flowed through you from your being before your doing? And what if in this moment you became your own purpose? If you want to know more, hit like or subscribe, DM me or comment Warrior Heart, and I will send you the link for how we can work together and how in this moment you can take an hour, you can take $97 of your own resources and money and do something different. If you have been seeking and feeling called or compelled, or you are in a situation where you have to do something different and you are done with crisis and chaos and survival mode, this can be your moment, because we have been conditioned as mothers, as women, as Black Indigenous women of color, as carers, to put everything else first, everyone else first before ourselves. And that self-care is a luxury, not a responsibility. And yet that is not our way. That is colonial, patriarchal ways that we have been conditioned to believe that they are our way of being, but they're not. Indigenous matriarchal ways of being, of love, of raising children, is of raising ourselves first, is of ensuring that we are well and strong within ourselves so that we can be the caretakers, we can be the matriarchs. And we need to be that for ourselves and allow that to be the way that we are there for others. Because we were taught that purpose lives outside of ourselves, that our worth is proven by how much we give, how much we can carry, and how much we can endure. That being resilient in survival mode is the peak success. Yes, it is a gift, and those who came before us role modeled that, but because they had to. But imagine if we could role model and leave a different legacy, one of choosing being well, one of choosing being worthy and wealthy as the foundations for our life, as the standard, as the mandate, not as the thriving. In Western patterns, being well is the absence of illness. Being well in matriarchal Indigenous principles and practices, the bare minimum is thriving. So imagine if that became your reality. We are trained to place ourselves last and call it love. But a life built on self-abandonment cannot produce a life of sovereignty, of self-determination, of freedom, a legacy of intergenerational wealth and sovereignty for those that we love, lead, and serve. What if in this moment you became your own purpose? And what if being well is what we give? And what if how we lead ourselves is how we lead others? Imagine what becomes possible if you serve from your being well is not optional, but your mandate, your responsibility, not just for you, but the people that you love, you lead, and you serve. What would change if you first placed love at your core and you return to love and being well as your foundations? Because in nature, nothing produces before the roots, and a tree does not apologize for taking the water before it can give shade. So I want this to be an invitation. I want this to be an opportunity for you to imagine what becomes possible if you became your own purpose. And if that became a mandate for you, a responsibility, that before you live for other people, before you live for everyone else, before you love and lead and serve, and your legacy as being everything external to yourself, but rather your life, your love, your leadership, and your legacy that became something that flowed from you because you gave it to yourself first. What would change? If this has spoken to you, hit like or subscribe, comment the Warrior Heart, and I will send you more information on the Warrior Heart activation. This is an invitation to not wait for 2025 to end and 2026 to begin before you start doing the work on yourself. We can rest, we can play, and we can do the work of activating now. We get to choose how we enter 2026 by what we choose to do today, in this moment. And we don't have to wait for tomorrow, the 1st of January, the 1st of the month, or Monday. Any given moment, We can choose to become our own purpose. We can choose to come home to ourselves, to get clear on who we are, to activate our warrior heart, and imagine what becomes possible if you are so clear that you are your own purpose, that becomes your responsibility and your mandate, and that who you are and how you are being in the world is your checkpoint, is your compass for how you do everything else. Big love you, mob. This is Chantel, the Bakaji warrior, warrior heart. And I wish you nothing but love and courage to choose yourself in a world that takes us away from ourselves, that profits from us thinking that everything we need is outside of ourselves, and that the greatest gift we can give to this life, to those that we love, to those that we lead, to those that we serve, and the greatest legacy is our true self.